I came here on a boat. Not a dime in my pocket. I had friends die here, double-crossed by greed.
Who put this thing together? Me!
Now Sosa thinks you're gonna take everything I ever had.
You wanna go to war? We'll take you to war, okay?
Thinks I'm just gonna lay down and die. But Tony Montana don't die that easy.
Say hello to my little friend!
Well, hello, all you cockroaches, and welcome to Cinemarcade. This is the podcast about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly and the bullets that fly when those two worlds collide. My name is Steve Guntley, and I'd like to invite you listeners to say hello to my little friends. Who's joining me here today?
Hi, hello. This is Justin.
This is J-Ban.
Well, we are very excited today because it's early in the morning and we're eating a bunch of Dutch babies and drinking a lot of coffee and trying to stay awake, which is not a problem that I think the main character of our subject today really has a problem with. I think he's
good.
He's rather alert, let's say. He's
I don't know if I would say alert.
Okay,
but...
he's hyperactive, let's say. Let's go with that. Because today we're talking about Scarface. This is both the 1983 movie and the 2007 video game, and holy shit, is there a lot to dig into with this duology here. Absolutely wild couple of products here. Yeah, all right. So, what's everybody's experience with Scarface?
My first experience with this movie was, like many young women, in the dorm rooms of men.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
I remember seeing so much in college, the Scarface poster everywhere, absolutely everywhere. I just left it at that for a while, and like people, like men, like man boys of the college age would just be all like, oh yeah, it's like one of the greatest movies that's ever existed. I was like, oh, I guess I gotta watch that someday. And then I think I was working through a list maybe during COVID, and I finally watched Scarface, and I was just like, wow, that's a long movie.
It's definitely long.
Oh my God,
yeah.
yeah.
It's kind of, I mean, we'll get into this.
2
but
hours and 50 minutes.
It's hefty. It's a hefty sit. How about you? When did you see this movie?
I saw this movie on TV at some point. So yes, they
Heavily
did
censored.
heavily censor it. Except they did that fun version where they replaced the words instead of bleeping the words.
Come over here, you mother father.
Yeah, there's a lot of talking about eating pineapple, which was interesting.
Because actually, that would change the meaning of that. Because you could absolutely get a scar on your face eating pineapple.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that was the thing. And so I didn't really care for the movie all that much, but I had the way that this worked out was I could go to my cousins and play any video game because my mother would not let me play most video games. So I played a lot of Scarface because it was actually a game that I found interesting. So I've played a lot of the game, if not having finished the game.
And you were only 10 years old.
I
Yeah.
was I was way too young. However,
That is wild to me. That you just didn't have a concept of what you were playing. It's like, oh, well, Mom, I just dealt a bunch of drugs. Like,
Yeah,
I just dealt cocaine to the Colombians.
I think I was 11 when the game came out, so I was probably 11,
Okay.
11 to 12.
It's much better. That's the
Yeah.
age that you're allowed
Yeah,
to.
you're an adult at that point.
That's
yeah.
the appropriate
yeah.
age. But then, this was the first time watching the movie and actually like trying to watch the movie, because before I just threw it on the TV. It was on TV, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I had a I had like a 14-inch TV or something, and then I had like a 25-inch TV. And so cable was on the small TV, video games on the big TV.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was in my bedroom at the time. And so it was like on that TV while I was playing a game.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even like paying full attention to it.
So you were just getting the full immersive Scarface experience on that one, yeah.
Yeah, well, I wasn't playing Scarface because this is at
Oh,
home.
okay. Didn't
have that
Oh,
one.
that's right. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
I was probably... God, I don't even know what I would have been playing. I don't even think the Xbox 360 wasn't out.
Banjo-Kazooie.
Like, I was
It's a good
playing
companion
something
piece.
on the PlayStation 2.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe the original Xbox at that time.
Are you saying this movie didn't change your life?
No.
I was having this conversation with some friends of mine because we were talking about like how horror fans in general, people who really love horror movies, tend to be surprisingly sweet and normal and kind. Like it really is true. Like if you talk to somebody who's like hardcore into horror and gore, they're like the nicest people in the world. But if people say that Scarface, Fight Club, Glengarry Glen Ross, people say that those are their favorite movies, huge red flag.
Honestly,
because it generally means
incredible.
that they are misunderstanding the characters really
Yes.
badly. Like if people are seeing themselves in Tony Montana or seeing like an aspirational figure there when that is expressly the opposite purpose that the film is trying to convey. Like the express idea is that this is a bad guy who does bad things and deserves to die. But somehow over the course of the years, like the culture has adopted Tony as like this figure of badassery. You're this guy who doesn't take any shit and you get everything done and you hustle and you work hard and nobody says anything to you. It's all about respect and balls, you know?
So you should be drinking Monster? Is that
So-
what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
This movie came out on December 9th. Is this a Christmas movie? Because there's a hell of a lot of snow.
I would say. I think we need to fold this into the canon. Yeah, this is a Christmas movie. I mean, we don't know. Miami doesn't have seasons. We can't tell.
Honestly. I had a solid argument this week about what constitutes a Christmas movie. Because one of my roommates doesn't think Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and it is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Christmas play. I think the cutoff is, does Christmas play an element in the plot somehow? And yeah, absolutely, it's a Christmas party. That's what they're there
He
for.
even writes ho 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 on a dead guy.
Yeah, that's just what Santa does.
Yeah.
yeah. That's how people don't realize that Santa actually kills people and writes ho 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 on them. And that's where that came
I
from.
loved the American Dad version of Santa.
I don't know that version.
You don't know that version?
No, I haven't watched the show.
He's a very tough son of a bitch.
Okay, all right.
I highly recommend next time Christmas rolls around, just watch like all 13 Christmas episodes of American Dad.
Okay, all right. I'll need to check this out.
One of the things that I was doing while I was watching the movie was I was like drawing parallels to Walter White in Breaking Bad.
Yes.
Because they have like a mildly similar rise to power in the drug trade, except you start off at least accepting Walter White and being like, oh, he's all right.
Yeah.
If not liking Walter White, and you end up hating him. And Tony Montana doesn't have that same trajectory. It starts
an asshole from frame
way
one.
closer to not liking him
Yeah.
and ends even more in the not liking him.
Yeah. Yeah,
No,
there is.
maybe not more, but still.
It's an interesting note that there's never a point where we see like an innocent Tony Montana. But let's get into a couple of little details about the movie here. So Scarface, like you said, was released December 9th, 1983. Ho, ho, ho. It was directed by Brian DePalma. It's written by Oliver Stone. And it stars Al Pacino, Stephen Bauer, Michelle Pfeiffer, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, Robert Loggia, and F. Murray Abraham. And a lot of people do forget that this movie's a remake because I think this one looms much larger than the original 1930 version, or 1932. But that one starred Paul Mooney. It was directed by Howard Hawks and produced by Howard Hughes. And it's about an Italian immigrant who rises up the ranks in the Chicago crime family. So Al Pacino became interested in developing this remake, and he was going to be like a straight like remake set in the 1930s, and it was going to be kind of following the beats of the movie. But the original director was Sidney Lumet, one of the greats. He suggested adapting the story to be more modern and make it be about Cuban immigrants because the U.S. was experiencing this mass influx of Cuban immigrants in the late 70s and early 80s. What they call the what was it called, the Mariel boat lift?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, which is a really interesting thing to read up on. But so after Lumet left the project due to creative differences with Pacino's producer, Brian DePalma was brought on. And he brought Oscar-winning screenwriter Oliver Stone along with him to write the screenplay. And ironically, Oliver Stone was reluctant to take on this project because he was battling his own severe cocaine addiction. And he had to go detox in Paris before he could actually start writing this very heavily cocaine-fueled movie. So he was actually sober by the time this movie was being written.
I love the idea of Paris being the only place.
Yeah. I mean, hey.
I have to go to Paris.
The cocaine here is terrible.
I can detox.
Yeah.
Croissants are a powerful weapon in the fight against addiction.
Cigarettes, and coffee.
And pretension. So this film originally earned an X rating because of its language and violence. Yes, the X rating was still a thing back then. And De Palma initially tried to edit the film down, but he quickly realized that the MPA wouldn't be appeased no matter what he did, so he decided to just stick with his cut and appeal the rating, which he successfully did, got this movie an R rating instead. And for a long time, this movie held the record for most F-bombs in a movie. It has 207 uses of the word fuck. These days, I looked at the rankings. It's down to number 68. So it has fallen quite significantly. I think Wolf of Wall Street has it beaten. The South Park movie has it beaten. And the South Park movie is pretty impressive because it's like 90 minutes long, and this one's 180 minutes long.
Well, there's also at least one song where they just say fuck a lot.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This movie was a financial success. It made $45 million on a $20 million budget, but critics at the time were either negative or dismissive. De Palma actually got a Razzie nomination for Worst Director. I have my issues with the Razzies, but that is kind of a sign of where he was at the time. But the film was eventually reappraised as a classic, and it has this massive cult following. It was particularly big in the hip hop community. Like rappers like Nas and Jay-Z really built up the profile of this movie, and it became kind of associated with rap.
It was sampled heavily in a lot of songs.
It sampled very heavily, even by the Lonely Island. Lonely Island 7. But it's considered one of the most quotable movies of all time, which is pretty hard to ignore, or hard to deny. There's at least half a dozen lines in here that have been pretty heavily referenced in other films. Okay, but I want to get into some of the issues that I have with this movie, and some of the issues that a lot of people have had with this movie, particularly the overwhelmingly negative depiction of the Cuban immigrant community. So the opening title crawl, it says that 125,000 Cubans who emigrated here during the Mariel boat lift, nearly 20,000 of them had a criminal record. Now, this statistic is completely inaccurate, okay? It neglects to mention that a lot of the people that had those criminal records were either political dissidents or they were being jailed for things that Castro deemed illegal, like homosexuality. The number of violent criminals, like actual, like scary serial killer type people who are in those prisons, was closer to like 2,000. So significantly less than the 20,000 this movie is saying. And so Latino groups protested this movie for all these negative depictions, as well as the fact that in this movie with almost exclusively Cuban characters, there was only one actor of Cuban descent in the entire movie. That's Stephen Bauer. He's the only one. Everybody else is Italian. And that's something I wrestle with this movie. Like, Pacino is giving a really... I think it's a really good performance here. I think it's a very committed, very consistent, and very intense performance. But he's also doing a very broad accent that's been imitated a lot by people who maybe don't approach it sensitively in any way. And it reflects pretty poorly. Like, we don't really see any other immigrants in this movie that aren't like drug kingpins,
And you could tell a little bit there was some brown face going on. There was definitely some like tanning situation of like some of these Italian Americans who weren't that tan to start off with.
Right.
And that's a little like, ouchie. Not the best look.
Right. And I think especially this movie is, it's a parable about like the corruption of the American dream. You know, the idea that anybody can pull themselves up by the bootstraps and become a great success, which is what happens to Tony in this movie. But it does often
Great
feel like
success.
it's just like picking on this one community, you know, in a way that, I don't know, it doesn't feel great. And the almost complete lack of Latino actors in this movie is kind of a problem, I think. But it's also kind of an undeniable movie. It's ferociously entertaining. Like, I know it's a 3-hour movie, but I have no problem sitting and just watching this movie because it's fast-paced, it's memorably written, it's got a lot of big, outlandish performances, and that ending is so operatic and insane that you kind of need to see it to believe it. I don't know where you guys came down on this one on your rewatch. I don't know.
I had many reservations when I first watched this movie, and they were only magnified by the second watch of this movie.
Yeah.
Al Pacino, like, I think Al Pacino, he has a much more subtle performance than, like, all the imitations and people joking around and quoting Al Pacino.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of, you know, because that's where I had seen this quoted by many a boy, saying, say hello to my little friend in, like, these, like, obnoxious tones.
I do have to say, I cannot think of a single time of all the times I've heard people quote this movie, I've never heard a woman quote this movie until just now when you said say hello to my little friend. So I think that says a lot. Yeah. But no, please continue.
But okay, I'm trying to, like, so it's real hard sometimes so I'm gonna start with the positives. I really like Al Pacino.
Yeah.
I love the setting of Miami. Like, it really feels like this is set in Miami. I believe it was shot in Miami, and
Well, a lot of it's California, but a lot of the exterior shots are Miami. Yeah.
well, it feels like Miami.
It does.
Like, one of the all great, in my personal opinion, great horror movies, great movies in general. The setting is a character, and I really feel like they nail the character of what I perceive Miami to be, which is like beaches and fun and like
neon and
nightclubs with hopefully better dancing than in the movie, because, like, I know it was the 80s, but, like, Michelle Pfeiffer does, like, this weird version of the dip over and over again. So first of all, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Very young Michelle Pfeiffer here, only her second film role after Grease 2.
We were doing a series on Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
But Michelle Pfeiffer, so beautiful, and given such a weird role. She's just basically a drug kingpin's trophy wife, or trophy significant other, and it's just so like, this guy kills her boyfriend, and he's all like, "Get your stuff, come in, move with me."
Right.
He already proposed to her beforehand, and she was just like, "Bro, what the fuck?"
Well, she's gonna gravitate towards the money and the power. So, like,
I think she's gonna gravitate toward the cocaine.
oh, yes, that as well. Like, whoever has those three elements is like, all right, well, I guess this is where I'm going. So,
Well, there's like this level of, like, you come to a woman, she's sleeping, and you're covered in blood, and you've killed her boyfriend. I feel like that's a little coercive.
yeah,
You know, like.
yeah. I mean, she doesn't make good decisions in this movie.
Oh, no. Like,
The thing to me is, like, as I was watching this, I was wondering exactly what they thought about the scene when they were making the movie. I was like, do they think that this is some kind of, like, you know, great grand gesture of love, or do they think that this is romantic from, like, the quote man's perspective, or did they? What did they think?
There is
of this
one
scene?
moment in the entire movie where she acts favorably towards him, and that's when she laughs at him for putting on her hat.
Yes.
That is the only positive interaction they ever have in the entire movie.
It's also the one attempt he makes to be charming in a traditional way. Like, it's the one time he kind of breaks down because he doesn't want her for her. He wants her because she is the beautiful trophy wife. Like, he wants everything that his kind of mentor Frank has.
And I think it's really interesting that when after he marries her, he finds her deficient. Like, why don't you go do something charitable? Like, he somehow thought that by marrying her, she was going to become this charitable matron of like his mother, like something like that. And it's just like, so Al Pacino, something that I love about Al Pacino, and you see this a lot in oh God, what's the movie called where he's
The Godfather?
Where he plays a blind character?
Oh, A Scent of a Woman.
A Scent of a Woman.
Yeah.
He's such a charming person.
He can be.
The way he acts when he first sees Michelle Pfeiffer, like he's like his eyes are falling out of his head, but in this like, gotta keep it cool. Like Al Pacino can act in a way that makes like a woman like even like just seem so beautiful that it's like distracting. He's very good at that acting, and that vulnerability of being all like, I'm a dumbass. That truly beautiful women cause men to be dumbasses. And there's so much misogyny in this movie.
So much.
It's just
Which is, again, I don't think it's a misogynist movie. I think it's a movie about misogynistic characters.
They're definitely like I was surprised in the writing where like his sister is like, I am a grown adult. I will do what I want with my body. Yeah. And she's like, and
then he slaps her.
Yeah.
Which is just like,
yeah, he's got this insane, like, I know Oedipal's the wrong word because it's not his mother, but he does have this insane kind of like attraction / protection / obsession with his little sister. Yeah,
and it's just like, oh my God. But there's just like, so there's 3 female characters, named characters in this movie, and it's just like, it's so dramatic and over the top, and like the women are trying to live their own lives, like in these weird ways, but it's just like, I don't know. I was like, when that woman lounging on a beach chair slapped him across the face, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
This is like, yes.
Yeah. Well, she slapped Manny.
Slapped Manny across the
which
face.
like I don't think Tony would have stood for that. Like I think that would have gotten really ugly really fast. But I mean, yeah.
What a weird way to try to pick up women, though.
It is.
As somebody who doesn't really try to pick up women, that's still weird.
I can't imagine there was ever an era when just walking up and like flicking your
that
tongue
is
at them like a
100%
lizard.
happened to me.
Has it really?
Yes, it has.
Oh, men
Was
suck.
it from somebody who saw the movie and was like,
I don't
"That's
know.
it"?
Like these, like it is troubling because you're just like, what are you thinking?
I mean, yeah. Does that really get your motor running? It's like, well, okay, congrats, dude. Yeah, you can yodel, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what you want me to take
It's
from
like,
this.
and it kind of lends to me, and this is something that is becoming less, but it's still around. There was this weird thing in the days before me where men,
The days before
the pre-Justin era.
the
BJ.
pre-Justin
The
era.
BJE,
Oh,
yes.
that means
Oh boy.
no.
Okay.
All right. Where like men got satisfaction or seem to have gotten satisfaction from just being disgusting.
Well, it's all an offset of like.
This is not before you,
Oh,
Justin.
no, no.
This is
This is
concurrent.
concurrent.
I was just saying, like it seems
Someone
to
say
be
it's
less
because
of, a
of
thing
you.
now.
Yeah, no.
It's something that seems to be slowly dying out. Like obviously, it's still around.
That's because of the Me
but
Too
it used to be
movement.
more prominent, which is good.
Well, and
Like-
I was thinking about that, like, because this is the 70s and the 80s. We're kind of seeing the corruption of the sexual revolution of the 60s, where like it's the free love era, and then it sort of became like picking up women became sort of like a competitive sport. And like you had to like issue these lines and everything. I don't know. It was before. It was BS. The BS era.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not Saturday Night Fever has a video game, but like
It does
this
not.
is the sort of era of like this sort of like misogynistic peacock man.
Yeah.
That is so attracted to women but so repulsive to women. Like that. Okay, so these men are movie stars. They're insanely attractive.
Sure.
And you're still gonna slap them across the face because they're being fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Stephen Bauer's a good-looking dude. Yeah, and he's, but he's
Well, it's
and he's
really-
like the one kind of likable character in this movie.
I honestly thought it was really bold of Al Pacino to be next to him because he is so beautiful.
Well, yeah, and I think we want to emphasize too that Tony is not a handsome man. He's not like tall or powerful or anything. He's very slight. He's got the scar on his face, and he's uneducated, he's uncultured, but he's ferocious. He's focused, and he's ruthless.
And he is always just a little bit creepy.
He's always creepy.
Steering away from the epic amounts of misogyny,
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's interesting, and I sometimes because some of the best films that have been made are mobster movies, but
Yeah.
I personally abhor mobster movies
Okay.
for a couple of reasons. First of all, I've always had a weird relationship with tragedies, like even Shakespearean tragedies. I'm just like,
Feels exploitative, yeah.
well, it's not even that it feels exploitative. It's just that people are such assholes making such stupid decisions. And you're just like, oh, what? Hamlet, you're going to stab through a curtain? What are you thinking?
I mean, yeah, no, there is always that element of like backseat driving a little bit. It's like, no, that's not what I would have done. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's of course the point. Yeah.
But it's the point, and it's so interesting because, like, Scarface is supposed to be a tragedy.
Yeah.
But there's just something about, like everyone having a hard-on for cocaine that it's just like, and like this excess lifestyle that makes it not come across as a tragedy.
Yeah.
And I feel like when Tony Montoya dies, you're like, yeah, he died the way he lived, instead of, wow, that was tragic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think that you're right, where is it a tragedy if you never really feel tragic about it? Because at the end, you're just like, well, yeah, you got what was coming to you.
Oh, yeah, no,
it's not that you didn't deserve this.
And really the whole point is just this corruption of like the immigrant story. You know, it's this idea that you can come here and make whatever you want out of yourself. But what happens if a sociopath comes over here and wants to make himself the biggest, scariest man in town? You know, like what happens when that American dream gets corrupted? You know, and it's not a subtle point that they make. I mean, as the final shot of the movie is him floating in a pool of blood under a sign that says "The world is yours." You know, it's not a subtle, but this is not a movie that traffics in subtlety.
No.
You know, it's big, it's brash. You know, I run really hot and cold on Brian DePalma, like where I find his movies so fascinating, but I also struggle with how derivative and sleazy they are. This is weirdly one of the movies that feels most anonymous for him, because it's not like dripping with Hitchcock references or like, you know, excessive nudity or gore or things like that. I mean, there's a lot of gore in this movie, but I think this is very stylishly made, and I think it's well paced, and I think he is the right director to keep this thing moving. You know, it's also like seeing Pacino in this must have been a pretty jarring movie, because before this he was known for being very soft-spoken and subtle. Look at him in The Godfather and Serpico, things like that. He's a quiet, kind of reserved guy with like kind of a high voice, and then from this point on, it's all deep voice. It's all hoo-ah, yelling. I'm Al Pacino. Like now, every performance is like ratcheted up to a 12, and that's fun to watch. But you do miss like the more subtle things from like Dog Day Afternoon or stuff like that. You know, which I think is his best performance overall.
I think that's a fair. I really like the original Godfather, but
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Oh, Dog Day is so good. But and I think he's great. I mean, this whole cast is really stacked and really fantastic. But it is a movie that kind of it does, for whatever reason. Like I watched it, and I'm like, I'm really enjoying the experience of watching this. I think it's a really well crafted, well written, well acted movie, and there's just still that element of kind of ickiness about it. Because
Yeah.
it just it revels in so much like grime and makes you sit with these really irredeemable characters for 3 hours.
Yeah, of the major characters, like Manny is probably the most likable, even
Yeah.
though he's not at the beginning, he's very unlikable, and then he no longer does any of that stuff, which isn't necessarily meaning he's a changed man, but we might just not be seeing him being a creep in the background.
He's still a murderer,
But,
Yeah.
he's still
murders
not
people.
a good guy, and if that's the closest relatable character, it does make it difficult to relate to anybody because it's like none of them are desirable characters. Nobody should want to be any of them.
No, but because it became so corrupted, and because and we'll get to the game in a second, but I think the game is a real perfect extension of the public perception of this movie versus the reality of this movie that I think that DePalma and Oliver Stone were trying to convey, and the way that it's gotten kind of corrupted. It's a really interesting kind of way to look at it.
It was interesting to see that Tony Montana is not a complete monster in the sense that, like, the women and kids thing, he's like...
Gets a gold star for that.
Yeah, he gets that's the one decent thing he does.
Yeah, he gets 1 gold star and like 50 demerits.
Yeah.
It's such a super weird, interesting thing, and it just shows how much like the character of Tony Montana, like he has. It's like the thing where it comes up in Dungeons and Dragons sometimes, where it's like he lives by a code. It's different from everybody else's, but goddamn does he adhere to it, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else but him.
Well, and he says in the movie, like, he never lies. And that's true. Like, he does not ever lie, and he does not ever hold back what's on his mind. He acts impulsively, and he sticks to it. The movie's got a pretty solid, like, 3-act structure. I think we have early in the film where we see he's the immigrant who just got here, and he's, like, figuring his way around. The middle chunk is as he's rising to power, making all of his moves, like trying to get himself in with the Bolivians. And then the final act, which I think is still the most compelling, is where he has achieved everything he wants to achieve, and it's left him empty and callous and completely drug-addled. His life is fucking miserable,
Very
but he's
high.
surrounded in this opulence all the
Well,
time.
it's so funny that you watch that and you're just like, you're in a giant bubble bath watching a movie
Yeah.
with a wife that you don't love,
No.
with your friend who you don't trust fully because you don't fully trust anybody.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is what I'm doing
work
this
for this.
I work for this. And it's just like, I don't, and I kind of liked that scene because it's just like, yeah, this is what you're doing it for. Like,
Yeah.
woohoo. But it's just, it's interesting, because they, just prior to that, they had the I'm making money and spending money montage. And the money montage, I was like, oh my God, this is such an 80s film. Like,
It's so 80s, yeah. I mean, the soundtrack's incredible. It's Giorgio Moroder, who's like the Italian king of the disco scene, and he's curating this whole soundtrack, and it's really synthy and poppy and very of its era.
yeah. And what the hell was with the floor show at the Babylon when he about to get shot?
Oh.
This guy in this massive silent clown-esque show, but he's not a clown, and he's just like, is this what happened in Miami nightclubs? Is this a thing?
So,
like,
Cocaine.
something that I also thought was really interesting was, how many of you guys watched Law and Order?
I've never seen
I've
an
seen
episode of Law and Order. Yeah.
So there's a character named Detective Munch, and the actor who plays him, I have forgotten the name.
Richard Belzer.
He's the MC at the club. He's the guy
Yeah,
who
he
introduces
is,
that
yeah.
act. I was like, I saw his face and his hair, and I was like, that's him. That's
Yeah.
the man.
There's this is a digression, but there's a very interesting theory surrounding Detective Munch because he's cameoed on other shows. Like, he always
Is he
pops up on a
just
bunch
the
of other
same
shows.
guy?
So there's a theory that, like, there's this, they call it the Munchiverse, there's this whole, that all of this exists, like, with it. So, and it all ties back to a show called Saint Elsewhere. Basically, it's implying that 70% of TV is all just a dream that took place on that show because of all the different tendrils to reach out. It's an interesting theory to look into. I'm not really summarizing it very well. But I want to talk about this finale because the last, like, 30 minutes of
What
this
a
movie is
finale.
where things really start cranking up. Tony discovers that Manny has been hooking up with his sister, and just thoughtlessly he pulls out a gun and shoots his best friend and kills him.
So thoughtlessly.
Just impulsively. He doesn't even.
So,
Yeah, he's coked out of his mind.
So he's coked out of his mind, but I personally really did like these moments where all of the sound dropped out and he has these moments of he's just filled with rage.
Yeah.
And like I just feel like there's like this masculine rage fueled situation that I felt like actually was brought across really well.
Yeah.
In these like those things where it's like and it's definitely like it feels very authentic, the rage,
and it's the one moment we see him express regret or thought. Like, I think that's the moment he realized. Yeah, he even realizes that he's gone too far finally, because it turns out that his sister and Manny had secretly married, and were going to tell him they've been married for less than a day, and now they force her to go back to the mansion. This is a really good performance by Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, like where she's realizing she's being brought back to Tony's house and she loses her mind. And but then, a Bolivian hit squad sent by a rival dealer named Sosa arrives at the mansion and starts opening fire on the house. The sister is killed, and Tony has his final stand where he literally sticks his face in a mountain of cocaine on the top of his desk, basically fuels himself up to the maximum, pulls out a machine gun, and starts killing as many of these assassins as possible. And this is so operatic and crazy. This is where we get Say Hello to My Little Friend. This is okay, I'm reloaded, all of this stuff, like all these great lines. And he just dies in this horrible spout of blood. Like he's getting shot and absorbing all these bullets, and he's still shouting taunts, and then he gets shot in the back, falls into his fountain, and dies.
Which I think on its own, it's like he actually gets killed, and sure, he was probably going to die anyway, but he actually gets killed because somebody else got one over on him.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He was outsmarted by somebody who snuck up behind him and shot him in the back.
Yes.
That he wasn't expecting.
And there's always going to be somebody who's younger and hungrier and deadlier.
It goes to show it's like an Icarus story, except worse.
Yeah. No,
Like,
it's absolutely it's
he
hubris.
flew way too close to the sun, learned his own hubris. But like, again, drawing another comparison to Breaking Bad, Walter White has one of these moments, and Walter White is able to do at least like one final redeeming thing.
Yeah.
Before he dies.
Right.
Tony Montana, no.
No.
Spoilers, man.
Nothing.
Spoilers. But I think it's really interesting, and I think this is one of the reasons why I don't think it like pans out as a true tragedy, other than like making them think everything is awesome, is that his choice to save lives is what causes him to get murdered.
Exactly. The one
Instead of
thing
going for a bigger cut, a bigger territory, instead of him trying to get more, it's him trying to be I don't want to say better person, but like a non-murderer of children.
Yeah, exactly. That he draws a line one time on his ruthlessness, and that's what ultimately gets him killed. But I think we can all agree he is unambiguously dead at the end of this movie. Yes, there's no wiggle room on this.
Yeah.
This is a dead man. And I think that's a good time to transition to talking about Scarface, the video game.
Scarface, the world is yours.
The world is yours. This game was released October 10th, 2006. It's developed by Radical Entertainment, published by Vivendi Universal. It was available on PS2, Xbox, Wii, PSP, and Windows. Okay, so firstly, I want to say I think you could argue that video games help bolster Scarface's reputation as a movie, like about as well as any other medium, because I think especially in the early 2000s, we're getting a lot of Grand Theft Auto games. Those are the games that are really blowing up in like 2001. In 2002, we get Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which is basically just Scarface, right? It's set in the 80s.
Heavily influenced.
It's set in like a Miami-looking place. You're playing as Ray Liotta plays the main character, and it is about building up your reputation, earning a lot of money, buying mansions, becoming king of the drug trade. And that game actually uses the entire Giorgio Moroder soundtrack from Scarface in the game. So they're not being shy about the influences there. And so that game was such a massive, massive success that with the movie's popularity surging as more people are discovering it through the game, and the time seemed right for a game adaptation. So Al Pacino agreed to lend his likeness to this game. He decided not to voice the character himself because he had aged 20 years and he sounded very different than he did in 1983. So instead, he handpicked a sound-alike, a guy named Andre Sogliuzzo. But we also had a lot of the original cast returning, including Robert Loggia and Stephen Bauer playing different characters. This game also features the talents of James Woods, Wilmer Valderrama, Cheech Marin, Tommy Chong, Megan Good, Lemmy from Motorhead, Bam Margera is in this game, Michael Rooker, Anthony Anderson, Bai Ling, Elliot Gould, Jay Moore, Michael Rappaport, Robert Davi, Michael York. Insane. Okay, this was really the era of video games where they were trying to pack as many celebrities into these games as possible. And that also includes the soundtrack, which is ridiculously stacked. You got Blondie, you got Run DMC, Johnny Cash, Iggy Pop, Public Enemy, Ministry, Judas Priest, Rob Zombie, the whole original film soundtrack. Like, I couldn't find how much this game actually cost to develop, but this must have been an insanely expensive undertaking. Oliver Stone was approached to write the script, but he declined, and instead he recommended screenwriter David McKenna, who had just written back-to-back crime stories, American History X and Blow. So, like, a pretty solid pick for this. And the game was slated for release in early 2005, but it did kind of poorly at E3, and so they decided to delay the game a year to allow for some more development. And there is also a PSP version called Money, Power, Respect, which is released at the same time, but it's a totally different game. That's more of like a strategy, kind of like a turn-based RPG, where you're trying to defend yourself against all these rival gangs. So that one sounds kind of interesting. This is by far the most complex game that we've talked about on this show, I think, just in terms of systems and length and like things like that. There's a lot going on in this game because this is a Grand Theft Auto knockoff. So this was the era when pretty much every other game was a Grand Theft Auto knockoff. And I kind of miss that era. It's been a long time since I played a game like this, but
yeah, it was like because you had the Godfather game, then you had Scarface, you had
the
Saints
Getaway,
Row,
yeah,
the Getaway,
yeah.
Wheelman, was that what was the one?
That was the Vin Diesel one.
Yeah, Vin Diesel.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a ton of these, and it was a really prominent thing. And I think this one is regarded as one of the better GTA clones. Like, it got good reviews. I think it's a generally well-made game. But we need to talk about the weird thing that this game does that I think this succeeds as a game and completely fails as an adaptation, okay? Because this game posits that Tony Montana did not actually die at the end of the first movie where he very famously and very bloodily dies. In fact, he's such a coked up badass that he's able to shoot his way through, what would you say, 500,000 Bolivians?
a lot of guys.
The entire population of Bolivia came here to kill him.
And I do want to clarify, the game doesn't mention it, but it is very clear that it's not... While it is a direct continuation, it is very clearly a, hey, what if this didn't happen?
Right, yeah, it's like it's a Marvel
He doesn't
what if.
he's not like floating in the fountain and then he gets up and goes on this rampage. You take over at the start of his rampage, but you know that there's a guy coming up behind you, so you shoot him.
Yeah, you take him out and it's totally fine.
And then you begin this game, which I think... It's something that is always an issue with licensed games.
Yeah.
Specifically movie adaptations, because you run into the problem of how do I make an interesting game that they've already seen? Mm-hmm. Like, if I'm going to make this game directly as a retelling of the movie, they've already seen the movie. How do I make that interesting? And The Godfather did something similar where they're like, what if we didn't follow the movie? What if we did something next to the movie? In this case, it's afterwards.
Yeah.
The Godfather, you're on the side, where you're not any of the major characters.
Basically, yeah, there's a
You're
scene,
side
like,
character.
there's a mission in that, we'll talk about that game eventually, but there's a mission in that game where it's revealed that your character is the one who put the horse's head in the guy's bed. Mm-hmm. So, like, you are operating behind the scenes of the events of the movie, Whereas this one just makes it a sequel. That it takes place a few months after the events of the movie, and it's about Tony trying to rebuild his empire and take out Sosa. And I feel like the obvious way to approach this game was like right there and smacking you in the face, which is retell the movie. Just adapt the movie and make it like there, because there's a lot of gaps that could be filled in. There's a whole middle section of the movie where he's hustling and he's trying to build up his empire, and we don't really spend a lot of time on that. Like you said, there's the musical montage where we're just seeing it happen. You could just be playing out that, and instead, no, they decided to like give him kind of a redemptive arc, and basically what they do here is make him the badass that all like the douchey college bros always thought he was. Take away the consequences of any of his actions and just make him like a super tough video game hero, which misses the point of the movie entirely. The point of the movie is that he was supposed to fail. He's a monster who did horrible things to achieve greatness, and it still didn't matter because death comes for us all in the end. But not this time, no. This time he dropped another quarter. He's fine.
The game is like his entire redemption arc, and unfortunately, I don't remember enough about the game. But I do.
That's right, because you played this game before you saw the movie.
I played this game before I saw the movie. I played this game during an era where most of my memory of that time is gone. However, I have like one distinct memory. So I was pretty young. This was one of the games that taught me economics.
Yeah.
But I do remember there was a time when I was young. There was a time when I was playing it. I had played this game so much that I dreamt about the game.
Okay.
Of like...
I've had those.
Yeah, just like driving around and doing the things. But like not first-person perspective. This was fully third-person, like as if I was playing the game still. It was such a weird experience to then wake up and be like, I think I've played this game too much.
Yeah.
I need to not.
I had that with StarCraft. I once spent an entire day playing StarCraft, and that night I had the worst night of sleep of my life with a pounding migraine, and I could not get images of StarCraft out of my head, and it kind of ruined the game for me.
So this game has a great soundtrack.
It's so stacked.
I am a sucker for games with great soundtracks. But it's so funny because I feel like nowadays they pick maybe 12 songs and I just repeat them ad nauseum, but like they're good 12 songs, so you're like, okay, I'll wander through the wasteland to 16 tons for the or something like that.
Yes,
but it's so like I guess I miss the era of having 100 songs.
Well, and I will say that has specifically been a staple of the GTA clone genre, because whether it was Saints Row, Grand Theft Auto, they all had large quantities of music. Like Saints Row and Grand Theft Auto each would have 8 to 10 radio stations a game, and then each one of those radio stations would have like 12 songs, 12 to 14, so that you can kind of switch between the different genres.
That reminds me, have any of you ever bought a video game soundtrack? Because my brother definitely bought the GTA soundtracks.
No,
I didn't buy the GTA soundtrack because like in those games you just drive around and listen to it. Like you don't need the CD. But I do have game soundtracks.
But you have to drive in real life.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, sometimes you'd have to drive in real life.
By the time I started to drive in real life, Spotify was a thing.
Okay.
So,
all right, we get it. You're young.
You're a child.
While I do own some CDs, I don't own many. I own like 7.
I've got a wallet, like a big old bursting wallet full of CDs sitting over there on that shelf. It's pretty ridiculous.
I have every Linkin Park CD and a couple Billy Talent CDs, and that's it.
All right.
And one Megadeth CD from back in the day.
That is an interesting discography right there.
Yeah.
But so this game does have a fantastic soundtrack, and like I said, if you know GTA, that's what this is. You have a big open map. You can drive around. You can steal cars from other people and to get better ones.
You can be a misogynist,
You
just
can-
like the movie.
Oh, okay, this is the other thing to talk about. One of the mechanics of this game is called the balls meter, and this is just so funny to me because I love how literal this adaptation is. Like Tony in the movie talks about, he's got two things: he's got his word and he's got his balls. You know, meaning he's tough and he doesn't take shit from anybody. And this game translates that into like a power-up system. Like in this game, your testicles are basically like the superstar that make you invincible for a little bit. You know,
Once
when
they
you're-
get too much testosterone, you have to blow off some steam.
when your balls meter is totally full, you can press the circle button and you will go into a first person like sepia toned mode where you are
Rage.
invincible, you don't need to aim, and you'll just like mow down everybody in your way.
You don't need to reload, nothing. You just
Nothing.
hold that trigger down and then spray and pray.
But you build up your balls meter by shouting taunts at people as you kill them, or by driving dangerously, or doing like stupid shit. There's almost like it could charitably be called satire, like making fun of the people who like the hyper masculine people
Yeah.
who idolize this movie. But I think it's pretty straight down the line. Like I think they just thought this would be funny and they did it.
An interesting part of that was they added a system in where when you shot people, you'd get points.
Yeah.
But you get points based on where you shot them, which means that the game will tell you on the side, when every time you shoot somebody, it'll tell you what part you shot. It's like left arm, head, decapitation.
And,
Nuts.
and
Nuts.
you,
then
you
and
were,
you can
J-Ban
shoot 'em in
was
the balls.
aiming for nuts, like as much as possible. J-Ban was aiming for nuts.
If a ball shot is worth 200 points, which I think is the highest.
It's a good shot.
So if
Yeah.
you want to get the balls meter, you have to take out other people's balls to do it. It's such an interesting and weird concept.
It's so literal and really, really funny. But that being said, I think this does a lot of things better than the GTA games of this era. Like the GTA games really, really struggled with aiming your weapons, and I think it feels pretty natural here. You've got a lock on, and then you can move the little reticle for a little bit more specificity, like if you want to hit them in the chest
It's
or the head.
specifically a system that now, since this game, the Grand Theft Auto games have started doing.
Exactly, yeah.
So
the
San Andreas
4 and
had
5,
like
yeah.
a kind of a half-assed version, but then 4 and 5 have a very similar. You don't have a box around them like the lock-on box.
Yeah.
But you do snap to center of mass on your next target.
Yeah.
And then you can slightly adjust the stick to then like aim up to the head.
Yeah.
And so they definitely did, and again, they did a solid chunk of things right. There were a lot of GTA clones that were very forgettable, and while this game might not have been a masterpiece, it was still relatively well put together.
I think so. Yeah, I mean the driving feels pretty natural. I think the navigation system sucks in this. It's just
The
like,
drug dealing mini games.
oh yeah, okay.
Gotta
The
play
drug
some
dealing
golf.
mini game was adapted from like a golf mini game. If you've ever played a golf game, you know you've got like this circular meter, and you need to charge up your shot. And in these, if you want to get a good deal in a drug deal, or if you want to bribe the police well, you need to charge up your golf shot, hit it, and let it go at the exact right moment, and then you'll get $10,000 for a key of cocaine or something.
Yeah. It's
It basically works, but it is silly.
it's a very interesting system, and for me, being a smaller child, I was just like, all right, now I know how to make as much money as possible. So I like mastered that mini game because I was
Yeah.
like, I want money, I want to buy fast cars. Look, I gotta, I need good stuff.
And there is a system, we didn't get to it in our playthrough, but there is a system involved called the Femme Fatale system, where basically, brace yourself, y'all, where you gain additional bonuses to your reputation by getting hot women to come live in your mansion.
Like the level of scantily clad women. They are like
Very
wearing
high.
like I was making a joke that is like if that skirt is so short it actually is a belt. Is it a belt or is it a skirt? Or is it a skelt?
Yeah, it's a skelt. Yeah, I mean, it's all the more funny because, like, I think generally for the era, this game looks pretty good. but a lot of effort has been put into making a pretty accurate Al Pacino replication, and almost no effort into the faces or personalities of any other character. There's a tiger attack early on, and the tiger looks like a Lego figure. Like it's
pretty great.
It's pretty hilarious.
But then there were things that we didn't get to.
Yeah.
Because we basically just played through essentially the tutorial. Not even all of the tutorial, because the next thing after what we did is here's how you launder money. And then after that, it's here's how you acquire property. And so there's a second layer of the game, which is pretty major.
Yeah.
Which is building up and managing the business, which isn't by any means the most simulated and realistic system.
No.
But it's a very fun way of like conquering territory. As you're conquering territory, you can start to take over fronts, which you can then use to sell drugs through, that kind of thing. They get you some money. You can also hire employees, and these would be like, you can hire a driver who will deliver cars for you. You can hire a boat pilot who will deliver boats for you.
Yeah.
You can hire a hitman where you can switch over to this other character and play as the hitman, do contracts, and then make money. And when you switch back, you get all of that money. There's an entire system for buying cars, buying stuff at the mansion to like customize it. As you're doing that, the different cars, boats, all of this stuff adds to your respect, which you need to level up. I say level up, but you need to get to certain levels specifically to progress through the game.
Yeah.
There will be certain times where it's like you don't have enough respect, you have to do this. And so it gives you a fun balance of doing missions, which is all that most Grand Theft Auto games are, is just doing missions and doing side missions.
Yeah.
You have some missions, you have some side missions, and then you have this other thing that you can go do, and that sometimes you have to do, but then you can go, sometimes your fronts will be attacked. You can pay extra money to have more bodyguards there, or you can pay a little bit of money and go deal with it yourself every time.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's the game that taught me, again, a lot about economics and how businesses work, which I say that in the broad strokes of like, at that age, I was like, look, I understand this is not a real business, but I understand I was a clever kid. I understood enough about how things worked to be like able to connect dots at certain points of being like, oh, okay. I mean, this obviously isn't a realistic way of managing employees, but
no, not so much. No, you should
Are you
not be
saying that you didn't learn to be a good boss from Scarface?
I'd be really
mean,
worried if you did.
To a certain degree, maybe, because there's definitely a benefit to seeing how not to do things.
Sure.
To teach you how to do things.
So don't be a violent thug of a criminal who berates and murders his staff, and you're probably good. Yeah.
But in terms of like supply and all that stuff, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. It put those ideas into my head at an early-ish age of like, oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Businesses require moving parts beyond just owning the business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's basically a little business school. It's just a little business school on a disc. You know. Yeah. I think it's exactly how we should treat it. Yeah.
I'm gonna go apply for a CEO position and put that on my resume.
Yeah, just slap down the game and just say, "Look, that's my resume right there, motherfucker." Yeah, I got some balls. I'm gonna go into a blind rage if you don't give me this job.
Yeah, and then the general story takes you through conquering the different groups that have sprung up in your place.
Yeah.
Which are largely people that have been mentioned but not seen.
Yeah.
So like they mentioned, I think like the Diaz brothers. And stuff. So like you'll go up against them, and then
again characters that they reference as being dead in the movie. Yeah, like they're already dead.
You will usually end in a big battle where you take over, you kill them, take over, and then you move on to the next spot. And then there's some interesting like story stuff.
Yeah,
they actually did write a story, and I think there's a couple flashbacks.
Yeah,
I think at one point you flash back to Cuba.
Oh yeah, I mean the training sequence. There's like an early combat training sequence which shows Tony in the army in Cuba in '76, and that's the other thing to mention. This game has like an early cover system, which wouldn't really blow up for another couple of years, but like you can take cover and like aim from behind like walls and stuff like that, which works pretty well. I mean, No, I wasn't. I
Works
think
okay.
I think this is a game that is like pretty functional and fun. Like if you put aside how batshit it is and how much it misses the point of the movie, like I think it's pretty solid. Which I guess leads us into sort of a difficult ranking here.
I think it's a difficult ranking because I feel like other than Ratchet and Clank, this is one of the first few like real games. I'm not
Modern
counting.
games.
Well, like I'm not counting Vertigo because Vertigo is such a clusterfuck.
Yeah, but we played a lot of like Atari games.
Yeah, we
or,
played
like
Atari's.
Arcade style,
Like,
yeah.
pre-2000.
Then this game feels like a game that is worth the money you spent on it.
Yeah,
Are you saying the Atari games are?
yeah. Come on, you don't want to play Gremlins all day long? Yeah, yeah. I mean, so for me, all right. So every week we're ranking the different games and movies that we're talking about. We're on a scale of good movie, good game to bad movie, bad game, and everything in between. I mean, I gotta go good movie, good game. Like with heavy asterisks on both. Like I think they're both flawed. I think their cultural impact needs to be analyzed and discussed, but I don't think you can really deny that it's a well-made, entertaining movie and it's a well-made, entertaining game. I don't know that they complement each other in ways that necessarily work, but just on the surface, like if somebody puts on Scarface, yeah, I'll watch Scarface. Like I would play. I kind of want to keep playing this game. Like it's a fun, nostalgic little blast for me when every game was a GTA clone. I think I got to give it a good.
I think if somebody asked me if I wanted to watch Scarface, I would go, what are the other options?
Okay, fair.
So I think I fall in the good game, but in terms of movies, like I like a movie, like a game is different. I don't necessarily need to relate to the main character of a game unless it's a very story-driven game like The Last of Us or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, the movie, it was hard to, I say hard, like I wasn't struggling to look at the screen, but I was struggling to be that interested in them other than just like an action movie.
Okay.
And so like I don't think it was necessarily a bad movie. I think it was an okay movie.
All right.
But I think the game's pretty fun.
Fair enough. Where do you come down, J-Ban?
Okay, this is going to be a troubling and perhaps controversial decision.
All right, bring it.
First of all, I'm going to say good game.
Okay.
There's a lot, as I mentioned, the soundtrack. There's a lot to like about it. I could see tooling around this, playing like 8 hours, just chilling, killing. Like it took me a little while to get to the driving capabilities.
It was fun to watch you try. Yes.
I had to escape the cops numerous times.
Which you did. You successfully did.
And I did ask J-Ban and got confirmation that I believe this was the first GTA-like game that
So
J-Ban
I've
had ever
lived
played.
with people, like my brothers, my roommates that have played GTA. So I've like sat next to a couch and like read a book whilst like multiple weeks and months of GTA have been played.
Yeah.
But I have never actually played it because honestly, like it just seemed like the whole sex worker situation, like it just really repulsed me.
Yeah.
You can also just not do those things.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to. Yeah.
But it's just like you get points for running people over. Like I don't know.
I mean, that works in real life too, though.
Yeah.
It just never appealed to me. And especially when I saw how frustrated people would get and they'd like be screaming at the set. I'm like, I'm good. I'd rather play Oblivion. But
Honestly, one of the best Elder Scrolls games.
Let's see. I'm going to say controversially that I think this is a bad movie.
Okay. All right.
These are the caveats. I think it's well made. I think the performances are really good. I just think it misses the point of what a tragedy is. I think it's. I love the setting, but I don't know. I'm backtracking.
Yeah.
I'm backtracking hard. I'm going to say a movie that's not for me.
Okay. Fair.
I think I've now seen it twice in my life. I really don't think I ever need to watch it again. Even the beautiful Michelle Pfeiffer, I'd much rather see her in Grease 2.
Okay.
Or something else of the many wonderful things. Speaking of Michelle Pfeiffer in Stardust, fucking love that.
Yeah, she's great in that movie. She's great in that movie.
So okay, good game. Movie's not for me.
Okay, that's fair. We can adapt it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I kind of agree in the sense that like I don't think I ever need to see Scarface again.
Okay.
I would like to watch the 1932 one.
It's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's real good. Yeah, definitely worth checking
many
out, and it's
colors
much
are in it?
shorter. Yeah. So, what's that?
How many colors are in it?
2.
2 colors.
Black, white. Yeah. I
Alright.
guess gray. Gray is in there. Yeah.
Gray's
yeah.
a shade.
Yeah. So yeah, well, a wide range of opinions on Scarface, which I think is something that movie's been inspiring since it came out. A lot of opinions, a lot of different takes on it, and I think they're all pretty valid. And I think it's interesting. It's still a fascinating movie to go back and dig into. So thank you, everybody, for listening. You can find us at Cinemarcade Podcast at gmail.com or at Cinemarcade Podcast on Instagram. I'm going to start a Threads for us pretty soon, too. So, we're going to be on Threads. Yeah, I'm still trying that out, but not sure I love it. But we'll
I still
see.
have never seen Threads in person.
It's just a social media app.
I was tempted to use it, but I don't like the fact that I can't delete it without deleting my Instagram because my Instagram is too valuable. Like, even though I don't have that many pictures, I still love looking at other people's pictures.
It's the one I consistently use,
Yeah.
at this point. But yeah, so we'll let you know. Check the show notes for that. Next week, we are going to bring on a guest who is going to talk about one of her very favorite movies, and I'm excited to play this game as well because this is going to be a fun time. We are going to be talking about Charlie's Angels from
Ooh.
2000, the Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, Lucy Liu Charlie's Angels, and we're going to be playing the game for the GameCube that corresponds with that. I've never played the game at all, but I did just rewatch the movie, so I'm excited to dig into this little confection of a film.
Oh, okay, good. We don't have to use the GameCube that I use as a microphone stand.
Oh no! Don't worry.
There's
We've
a
got
GameCube
another
over there.
We've got another GameCube set up. Yes, absolutely. We are resplendent with GameCubes around here. So thank you everybody for listening, and tune in next week for Charlie's Angels. Bye, you cockroaches.
Goodbye.
Oh, well.